beautiful chiaroscuro, bittersweet comedy. And I think one of the really great things about having you here today, Todd, with a bunch of emerging filmmakers, is that, you know, obviously this is your first feature, and you as often happens with that, you're a bit of a multi-hyphenate filmmaker, you know.
Yes, yeah.
Director, writer, producer, and star.
And editor.
And editor,
Yes.
exactly.
Unintentionally.
Maybe we could start with that and just, you know, how, you know, when how you manage to juggle all of those roles.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you all so much for being here.
Yeah, also.
Lovely to meet you all. Yeah, so I think, you know, anytime you start wearing multiple hats, it's just, you know, it's based on necessity. When I started writing this, I wrote it because I'm an actor and I wanted to write more work for myself that I saw myself in. I was really struggling after like a 10-year career off Broadway in New York, just getting work, and I had gotten to this point where I was constantly going into understudy like British actors who were playing gay characters on Broadway. I was like, okay, I have to do something else for myself. So writing was born from that. I made a web series and I did a short film, and I had always had sort of Chrissy Judyt in the back of my mind as something that I wanted to tackle. And when it came time to making it, initially I started writing it in 2018. By the fall of 2019, we had a production team involved, and we had like 150,000 US to make the film. And then we were set to film in the summer of 2020. And
spoiler!
Yes. And so what happened from that was actually such a blessing. I mean, it's amazing when things start crumbling around you. And I say this all the time, if you're a creative person, you will always think creatively and find creative solutions for any problems that come your way. I had this phenomenal producer from LA who I loved working with. We had an amazing DP from LA who was great, and we were literally location scouting when we got the news that we had to shut down. And it was a mess, and I was like, oh my God, you know, like everyone was. So essentially what happened was we had small investors who were like, keep the money, make art. I moved from New York City to Provincetown that summer. And for anyone who doesn't know Provincetown, the third act of our film takes place there. It's a gay enclave on Cape Cod, which is like a seaside town in New England. My brother is, he works on the lighting team at SNL, Saturday Night Live. And he also dabbles in cinematography, and so that summer we had a little seed money, and I was like, let's make something. So we made a short film, and by the fall we were submitting it to festivals. It was doing pretty well, and he called me one day and he was like, let's just figure out how to make Chrissy Judyt with what we have, and it doesn't have, you know, we made this short with nothing. His wife came on as a self-taught sound mixer. And so it was really just the three of us who made this short film with another actor. And then that got the ball rolling to say, okay, I don't want to let, you know, we had to shoot in the summer just because of the way the film is set. And I was like, I don't want to let another year go by looking for money and waiting for someone to give me permission to make this film. So let's just do it. Yeah, so that's kind of how all of the hats came on. So producing just comes naturally when you're a director anyway. I mean, and then editing really I did not want to do, but in post we just did not have the money to bring someone on. And I taught myself how to edit my short film. So I just jumped in. I think sometimes being blindly naive is really helpful when you're, you know, working on, you know, your first feature.
Fantastic. Now, I know you're all going to have your own questions, so we're going to have a bit of a chat for 15-20 minutes, and then I'm going to throw it open so you get to ask all. But I guess that is part of the joy. Whenever I speak to emerging filmmakers, you know, obviously there are struggles to overcome, and it's not easy. Mm-hmm. But there is that kind of, you know, it's a kind of, you activate this army behind you. So can you talk to me, I guess, a little bit about, working with your brother for one thing, is that a bit, you know, how easy is it to get family involved?
I'm really lucky. My brother and I are very close. He's like 2.5 years younger than me, but we shared a room until we were 18, until I was 18. So we can just kind of read each other's minds. And I think I was really nervous to make this film for 20K. I really didn't know if we would be able to pull it off. And ultimately, you know, the things that fell into place were Wyatt Fenner, who's plays Chrissy, came on board. And when we were looking for someone to play Chrissy, one of the big things was, this actor has to know that like we are really doing this, what we call run and gun style. My brother and I, you know, he had, we shot on a Sony A7 III, which is like a very small camera that sometimes is mostly used for photography. We had 2 lenses, a gimbal, and we had a boom mic. And then we had like 2 lav mics just as backup. So everyone who came on board knew that this was something, we just never expected to be here in Melbourne. All of the festivals that we've played in the States, like we all got together and thought like, okay, this is a fun thing that we're gonna do this summer, and it's a story worth telling, and hopefully the right people will see it so that we can show it to the industry and let people know the kind of work that we wanna do. Working with my brother is seamless, and I think really it's the only way that we were able to shoot a feature with a 3-person crew. It was me, him, he did everything imaginable that the camera crew does. And we didn't have a lighting kit, so most things were shot with natural light, and then just fixed up in post. And his wife graciously came back on as our sound mixer, which we were so nervous about. But the biggest thing that we had to pay for was a post-production sound mixer, just to kind of like, you know, finesse everything for us, because there's a lot of live performances, and some things we dubbed from studio mixes that we shot before, or that we recorded before shooting, and then some things we shot live in the space. So that was where the bulk of our funding went, but really everyone who came on board knew that this was like a no budget project, and most of the money went to like transportation, lodging. We shot in 5 locations on the eastern seaboard of the US, so it was, I know maybe that if someone were explaining this to me in Australian terms, they'd be like, okay, but you know, Philly is like 2 hours south of New York, and then Provincetown is 6 hours north of New York. We also shot on Fire Island, which is like New York's gay enclave, which is about like 2 hours outside of the city. So there was a lot of moving around, and everyone was just graciously jumped in, and it created a really beautiful product at the end that everyone's been proud of and excited to be a part of. So
I guess one of the strengths though of doing things with such a, you know, a tiny budget and without necessarily, you know, film bodies involved, or, you know, big production companies, or does that, and also with your web series, it seems like this is a kind of new and exciting frontier for queer filmmaking, that you can actually get out in front of things without gatekeepers telling you what you're allowed to do, when you're allowed to do it. Is that one of the kind of benefits of doing it on your own?
Yeah, I think my point of view in this film is so strong because there weren't so many external voices, and those voices were there in the initial, when I had a producer and a DP and all these people who, you know, wanted to put in their creative input as well, which was welcome, and I thought that I needed that as an emerging filmmaker myself. And really being given the space by all of the people involved to take the reins helped me to create this incredibly personal story with my sharp point of view. And I did do that in my web series too, and I think, like, you know, there are dozens of people out there who will give you a million reasons not to do something, and you can choose to listen to them. And I think for a long time I did, you know, my web series was about a young man living with HIV, and everyone I went to was like, no one's gonna wanna watch a TV show about a guy who has HIV. And I was like, well, it's not really about that. You need to work on your elevator pitch. And it was just, you know, the struggle to get it made. And finally I was like, okay, well, I just need to fucking make this thing. And it was like a small but mighty hit. So I think it just always comes back to, like, if you have a story to tell that no one else can tell, trust that voice, and push forward. You know, I think it's important to like hear what the critiques are and what people's suggestions are along the way, but I think it's equally important to say, I hear you, but I I'm gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, it's funny. I just interviewed a short filmmaker the other day, and a line they said I loved was that you're never going to be able to make as bold choices as you are at the start. So
Yes.
just do it.
Yeah, totally. I don't know if anyone's read the Duplass brothers book. It's really phenomenal, and they touch on that. They're like, you're never gonna get the experience of your first feature, except once, and so it's this really beautiful time to like, push yourself, test your limits, and like listen to yourself.
I also wanted to talk about just the decision to go in black and white, and what that kind of, what considerations then that brings into play when that's how you're going to present the film.
Yeah, I love black and white films. I hadn't seen many queer black and white films, so I thought that would be an interesting. Our community is so colorful and in a really beautiful way, and so much of our storytelling is surrounded by the rainbow and colors. And when I was writing it, I just knew I wanted it to be in black and white. For me, there's something inherently romantic about black and white films, and I wanted to juxtapose that with the story of a platonic friendship. And then, aside from that, I think there's something timeless about black and white films. And when I was passing the script around, everyone kept saying the same thing, which was like, what you have working in your favor is that this is just a universal story about friendship. And straight people, gay people alike would come to me and say, oh my God, I had this friendship. And so it felt like using black and white as a device enabled us to make the story feel timeless and connect to the timeless story of friendship. Wyatt said there was someone in LA when we were screening there, a man in his 70s, I guess, who was like, I was watching this and I felt like I was back in the 60s watching me and my friends. Aside from like a couple uses of like cell phones, we don't reference pop culture, we don't reference politics. So I want someone to be able to watch this 10 or 20 years from now and wonder when it was shot. And I think it just adds to the final reason for black and white was like, I love the idea of this person, Judy, who feels their most authentic self and is exploring their authenticity under all of this makeup and a wig and jewels. And when we see that typically presented, it's the glam, it's the color. And when you see it in black and white, it really, you see the person underneath the facade, and it's really beautiful.
What does, you obviously came up as an actor off Broadway in New York. What has that brought to, I guess, the way that you look at performance, and how do you translate that to the screen?
Well, I think when I was working, I always felt like, I should be at this other level. And now I look back and realize it was such a blessing, because the work that I was doing was all original work. They were all new plays, and a lot of times I was really sitting in with the writer on the development of the work, and was given the freedom to say, hey, this monologue, I think it would be better if I didn't say this line, and I just acted it. And it really, I know it's like a kind of an old trope with film, show, not tell, but that really helped me as a writer. When directors and writers would give me the freedom as an actor to say, I don't need to say the line, I can act it. And so as I write things, sometimes as a writer, the original script was, I think the original script was like 120 pages, which was too long, and it whittled down to about 103 or 105 pages. And then when we went into production, we had to cut so much more because we just didn't have the money to shoot some of the stuff. So it whittled down to 85 pages. And it's a 96-minute film, so I can't imagine what an extra 10 or 15 pages would have done. But it was in that moment where I was like, I'm gonna trust the actors when we get on set to tell the story. We don't need these moments. And trust the medium of film, which is so visual. Yeah, and then also I just, the landscape of New York theater has changed so much. I moved there in 2005, and it's just really become like a commercial space. So the New York theater actor is not really a real opportunity as it was in like the 80s and 90s. And so I feel really blessed that I got to give a space for these brilliant New York theater actors who I know and came up with to shine on screen, because they really weren't getting the opportunities to do that otherwise, So, and their performances are what make the film. I mean, people walk away and talk about, you know, how much rehearsal time did you have and this and that. We didn't rehearse anything. I mean, you know, Wyatt and I had like many phone sessions to chat about the characters, but really we just didn't have the time. It was like, do you know the lines? Okay. And we did 2 or 3 takes and had to move on to the next thing. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Again, all about.
Because you seem like in your kind of creative process, it's very hands-on, which I'm sure everybody can kind of relate to. You kind of have to be like you have to do everything. And I guess especially when you're working with people you know as well, like how do you maintain a sense of objectivity about the film itself, when you are kind of having to like cut lines, cut scenes, but also give constructive feedback to people or even yourself when you're very connected to it?
Yeah. It's tough. Someone asked me the other day, like, how delusional you have to be in this industry, and it is. You have to walk a fine line of delusion, because, like, delusion is what has me sitting halfway around the world presenting a film that I really wasn't sure if we would get into, like, one festival. But also, I guess I have enough, like, self-loathing as a queer person. I think I think the way that I handled it was by, you know, the things that I don't talk about are, you know, we had a composer and I worked with this guy for 2 months and he presented work that I just didn't like. And I listened to it and we put it under the scenes and I was like, this is not my movie. And I had to go back to him and say, unfortunately, we're not moving forward. And it was very hard because this was a friend, you know, and he understood. And so I think what you have to do is really, I spent a lot of time letting other people on other projects tell me what they thought and letting that influence me. My web series was very difficult because I let a lot of people tell me what I should be doing, and I can see the episodes where I was listening to myself and the episodes where I was letting other people dictate what I should be doing. And so I think ultimately, as long as you're gentle with yourself and with the people around you, expressing what you need and what you want your film to look like is something that no one can argue with, and something that no one will take offense to. I just had the fortune of working as an actor on a feature film, and it was this director's first feature, and there was an Oscar winner in the cast and a Tony winner in the cast, and it was like, you know, very intense to be around. And I asked him, I was like, you know, I'm a young filmmaker, I would love to sit in on production meetings if it's okay. He had a $3 million budget for his film. He said, absolutely. And I watched him sit in on sessions one day with his hair and makeup team, and I watched all these people say, okay, and these are people who have had years of experience, say, this is what we want to do with this person, this is what we want with that. And I could see behind his eyes that he wasn't feeling it, but he was like, okay, yeah, well, let's see, can we do a test and see what that looks like? And I felt so grateful that I had my experience working on the feature, because I was like, I know this guy is not into this idea, but he's too unsure of himself as a creator to tell people what he wants. And I know that it would save everyone time later if he had just told the hair and makeup team, I don't really think that that's gonna work, and this is what I want. And so I think it just constantly comes back to trusting your voice, being open to people saying, like, what if I tried it this way? Could we cut this line? You know, we had some brilliant actors on this film, and one of them is James Tyson, who is a genius comedian, and they play this non-binary character. And when we started rolling on their take, they were like, do you mind if I just riff a little bit at the beginning? I was like, you can do whatever you want, because they had already proven themselves on set to just be such a light and they had such a great voice that it made total sense. And we didn't have to cut anything, but I knew, like, I think that's the genius thing about film. Like, it's just an opportunity to try something new. Every take is an opportunity to rehearse something. And so it takes very little to gift someone an opportunity to shine. And if you don't like it in the editing room, that's it, you know? But giving people the opportunity to make their voice heard will only make the work better for everyone.
I have to run to my day job after asking you this question, but thank you so much for sharing everything. I can't wait to see your film. Some of my favorite American indie films are by brothers.
Yeah.
So the Safdie brothers, the Duplass brothers, those little-known Coen brothers.
Never heard of them.
And then even the Russo, you know, the way to stop. are you going to kind of like present yourself as brothers making films together going forward as like a package?
You know, yeah, the Flaherty, but yeah, I love the way you say our last name. That's great. Yes, I am working on my next feature. I do hope that my brother can come on board. He is also busy with his own projects, but he's already said that he, wants to work on whatever the next thing is. And I think my brother is just one of the kindest people. And it's another thing that I really value on set. I don't care the experience that people bring. And I didn't really have the luxury of asking a lot of experienced people to come on the set apart from our actors. What I care about is, it sounds woo-woo, but someone's energy and their kindness. And my brother and I sort of established that in the room. And so I can't imagine working on a film set without that. So I hope that I'm lucky enough that he will continue to make films with me. But I also know that, we have our own paths too, and I think that there's no hard feelings if he's a multi-Emmy award winning lighting guy, so, he might have other things coming up, so.
How have you found the journey, I guess, like, now that the film is completed, how have you found the journey with showing that to audiences through festivals, and also when it comes to, I guess, the end of the festival run, what is the plan? And I mean, with such like a low budget project, how have you found, like, a theatrical release or even streaming? Like, is that something that you kind of work in? Or?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. The brother thing is you have to think PR. You have to start thinking about how to promote your film. And so once you've created your baby and you love it so much, then you have to figure out how you're gonna get other people to love it. And so I was like, okay, well, it's a brother film, that's a thing, check. We shot it for $20,000, that's a thing, check. And our EP is in the room, Tara Imperator, and she was like, I've heard that maybe we shouldn't let people know what the budget is because it'll ruin deals down the line for us. But really, telling people what the budget was got us so much press. I mean, before we premiered in LA, we were in every publication and people were like, how the fuck did you do this? So I think that if you have an element of a hero thing, you have to work that PR angle. For us, we've been really lucky. It's been an interesting experience. The queer festivals have really embraced us. Not unsurprisingly, but I really didn't think that we would be making international debuts. And we have been to a couple non-queer festivals, and it's been interesting to sit in those spaces because the audiences all react the same. The audiences have all been really generous. They've laughed, they get the content, and they can relate to it, even if they're not queer. But the PR behind the festivals pushing our film has been different with non-queer festivals. And so it's hard to go into those spaces. There's no one recording this, right? We were
Only your producer.
We were in the Hamptons, and they put our film against Hugh Jackman's new film that he's absolutely going to win an Oscar for. And so the Hamptons is this starting point for people to do their Oscar push, and we were totally lost at sea there. I mean, we had 40 people at our screening, and so you have to check your ego at the door and say, well, I'm here, and
40's still good against
40's still good. Of course, but when you're seeing everyone line up for Hugh Jackman's film, and you're also I want to go see Hugh Jackman's film. Yes, so we were also very lucky that I have two friends actually who are doing feature debuts now too, and they're in the festival circuit and doing totally different festivals than we are, and they haven't gotten distribution yet. We got distribution at Outfest, which was a huge learning experience. I wasn't, you won't learn until you start to do it. I think I could have listened to a million people tell me what that process is like, but until you're in the room, a sales agent saw us at our first festival in Provincetown, and I was like, what's a sales agent? What, do we need that? And the executive director of the festival was like, did you speak to that guy over there? I was like, yeah. She was like, whatever he wants, you need to like set a pony up with him because he's gonna get your film sold. I was like, okay. And we were very lucky. We found a distributor in LA, and they've really been, you know, pushing us forward. And then there's also, I don't know if anyone has done a feature, or they do this for shorts as well, but there are festival reps. So we have a festival rep who sells our film to festivals around the world and pitches it to people so that we're not on Film Freeway. And I have learned a lot about that. You know, if you have an in at any festival, try to work it, because there are, I mean, I won't say what festival, but I had sent my short to a festival 2 years ago, and we didn't get in. And they reached out for Chrissy Judy, and they were like, oh, we saw that you were at Outfest, we would love to screen the film, and can we have a screener? And so I sent it to them, and they reached back out, and they were like, do you have a short that we could program before this? And I was like, oh, you mean the short that you didn't program 2 years ago? But
Did you delete that email before
No,
sending
I
it?
didn't send it. I was like, absolutely, here it is. But I talked to our festival reps about it, and they were like, there are 3 people working at that film festival. They get, Film Freeway is amazing if you use that, but you get so many submissions. And that's the other thing I'll say. I have a friend who had a short, and he's making his first feature now, and his short is not getting into a lot of stuff. You're just up against more people who are making shorts. It doesn't mean that the work isn't good. It doesn't mean that there's not an audience for it. Like, I think that's just the hardest thing about making stuff and putting it out into the void is like, you know, fortune favors the bold, and you have to gamble on yourself. And that's why I made a feature, because I saw a ton of friends make shorts, and it's a great way to navigate and to learn and to understand the process of, you know, what these festivals can do for your career. But there are a lot more people in competition for those spots. And so if you have a feature and it speaks to an audience, you have a better shot of, you know, getting a spot in that festival. So I don't know if I answered your question. Yeah, just
Really good.
rambling, rolling answers.
Really good.
I just wanted to ask, on set, did you have, when you were performing, did you have someone give you notes? Did you have someone in the crew?
Yeah, how hard is it
You know-
to carry a film while also doing all the other roles?
You know, actually, I would typically watch the first playback just to get a sense of what was going on. And I do trust my brother, and there were a couple times when he would say, but there's a scene where I'm like smoking a joint out on a fire escape, like talking to a roommate who's about to kick me out of our apartment. And I'm just like, I was holding the joint in like the first 2 takes, and he was like, I think it would be really funny if you smoked it and like had the exhale while you were like talking to this girl. And we used that shot because it was just hilarious, you know? So I think there was an openness to hearing people's feedback. And even when Wyatt and I were doing scenes, we would check in with each other, and like, even though I was directing, I would be like, and what do you need, and is this working for you? And I think that's what's great about shooting digital, is it's right there for you immediately to look at.
Yeah.
And say, did this work or did it not? And I find as an actor, you're always waiting for, you know, the note that's gonna change your performance. And what I've learned as a filmmaker is people are typically giving the performance that they're gonna give in every single take. There's not like a huge array of differences. And in learning that, I just learned, like, for my own performance, to just trust myself. And you know, you can try subtle little things here and there, but the performances get shaped in the editing room. Yeah.
Sorry, also, you may have already said this, but what was the shooting schedule?
So we shot for 10 days in New York City, or thereabouts, New York, Philadelphia, Fire Island, and then we took a 2-month hiatus because Judy's character goes through like a little bit of a transformation and moves to Provincetown. And I had actually booked a job doing the Glass Menagerie in Provincetown, so I went up to do that play. And then Wyatt and my brother and his wife came up, and the 4 of us spent 6 days finishing up the film in Provincetown, where the 3rd act takes place, which was extremely complicated because I was still doing the show at night. So we would shoot during the day, I would go to the show, and then we would shoot more at night. It was a lot.
Debut feature.
Yeah. Yes, but it's what worked out with everyone's timing, and I'm happy with the results. I think it all, you know, it came together really beautifully.
You're on a roll.
Sorry.
We'll meet outside.
How long did it take you to edit?
What's that?
How long did it take you to edit?
The edit took a couple months. I told myself that I was gonna sit down with the first chunk when I was in Provincetown for 2 months, and I did not. I just needed to take a break from it. I think I knew that we had like that schedule. I wanted to make sure we were ripe for festivals in 2022, but I also needed to just listen to myself and say like, I'm not going to be able to edit this film the way it needs to be in this space, in this moment in time. So I think I started dabbling with it, and then this happened when I was writing the script too, and I think when you edit, it takes a long time to really get the engine going, and then I had a nervous breakdown. I called Wyatt. I was in P-Town for New Year's, and I was like, I don't know that I'm gonna finish this in time for deadlines. And he was like, I think you can handle it. And he was like, what do you need? I was like, I think I just need like 2 weeks. He was like, why don't you stay in P-Town? Don't come back down to New York. See if you can stay up there. And I edited like over half the film in 2 weeks.
Wow.
So, but I was literally just staring at a computer for 18 hours a day and like going to bed and waking up and immediately working on it. So it took a really long time. And then after that, there were a couple more edits, but I would say like 3 months in general, like November through the middle of January, yeah.
Distance now, and you're sitting half the world away, right? Presenting the film to an audience in Australia. What's your most abiding or happiest memory of the whole process from there to here?
From there to here? Truly, when you make something in the dark, you never know where it will land, and making the film was the happiest that I've ever been. But I will say, we got into Provincetown Festival, which is a pretty big festival in the States, and a week before we found out we got in, I was like, we should have heard by now, we didn't get in, and it's because of all these reasons. And I was talking to Tara, our EP, and I was like, oh, this sucks. And then we found out we got in, and I was like, oh, well, they probably just put us in because, the third act takes place in P-Town. And she was like, no, it doesn't get to be both things. Like, you got in because it's a good film and it needs to be in there. And the happiest moment, I will say, is when we got into Outfest. That was like, I was like, okay, we have a winner here, and people are gonna see this. And I didn't finish answering your question. We do have distribution. We're doing a limited theatrical release in the States in April, and then hopefully we'll end on a streamer. So yeah, that's the plan. But I think, as sad as it is, like the validation of saying like, okay, an audience is gonna see this was really just like, such a weight got lifted, and it's changed the course of my life, honestly. The past 6 months have just been insane. So, and I
Just
hope it
keep
keeps
going,
going.
people, hey?
Yeah.
Exactly. Glad to have you here today,
Thank
Todd,
you.
to give your insights, and I'm sure people got a lot from it. So can we all just put our hands together for that?